Okay. Uh, Welcome everyone to another round of discussion of Talking Films online. Talking Films online, as the name suggests, is an online group which meets to discuss cinema every week. We began in June of last year, and we have continued to meet every Saturday at 9 p.m. To discuss what interests all of us here at the cinema. Today, we have Dr. Ketaki Chowkhani. Ketaki suggested that we watch the film Bachelor Girls, and she will be initiating discussion on the film. It's with a great sense of pleasure, pride that I introduce Ketaki to all of you. We're just talking a few minutes before that. I know Ketaki for more than a decade now. As a MA student in Pondicherry University, and then later she moved to EFL University, and I think I followed after her. So it's great to see someone whom you have known, a decade ago, today being one of the pioneering researchers in a new area of study called single studies. I'm also keenly following her social media posts where she puts up all these interesting things that she's doing with her students, and that's something that I feel tremendously happy and proud about, the way she's engaging with her students and making it so interesting and worthwhile for all of them. Now to the more formal kind of introduction to Ketaki. Dr. Ketaki Chowkhani is a faculty member of sociology at the Manipal Center for Humanities. She researches and teaches single studies and gender studies. She has a PhD in women's studies from Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. Her doctoral work focused on sexuality education and adolescent masculinities in middle class Mumbai. Her writing has appeared in the Indian Journal of Medical Ethics, Journal of Porn Studies, New York Times, in edited volumes published by Routledge and Cambridge University Press, in plain speak, teacher education, and ultraviolet. Ketaki also has an MPhil in cultural studies from the English and Foreign Languages University, and an MA in English from Pondicherry University, which is from where I know her. With Ketaki, we are very, very happy to welcome you to Talking Films Online, and over to you.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for having me here. It's a great pleasure to be able to be invited after so many years, being a student, being here, being amongst my other teachers like Tarakeshwar sir and so on. So it's a great opportunity for me to also share the new work that I'm doing. And my students also here, they have also joined in the discussion. So I'm very glad to be here. Now this film, Bachelor Girls, was, so I'll just briefly introduce the film to you and, the filmmaker and what she's trying to do. And then I will discuss some of the topics and some of the themes that I found interesting in the film. And then I'll connect it to the research that I do and the course that I teach and some of the work that we do in class with my students, right? So this film was made in 2016 by Shikha Makan. And she's an advertising filmmaker. And this is her first documentary film. And she made it in one of her interviews on the radio. She said that she's made this film because of a personal experience that she had in Bombay. So at some point of time, she was also a single woman living in Bombay. And she faced these issues that she chronicles in her documentary film, right? And at that point of time, she thought that it was something that only she faced. But then once she started talking to other people, she realized that this is something that a lot of other people as well are facing. So one of the main things that she really wanted to question through this film is this whole idea of this women's empowerment. She's saying is, yes, we are kind of talking that women are really empowered, that there's this version of this urban, educated, self-reliant and empowered woman is there, right? But the moment this kind of woman, this is the kind of woman we also imagine, we aspire to, but the moment this kind of woman arrives at our doorstep, we do not want her to live in our homes, right? So this is exactly what she's trying to explore, this kind of dichotomy that these are the aspirations we have. We are developing as a nation. We want Bombay to be, we want cities like Mumbai, we want cities like Delhi, we want metropolitan cities in India to be global cities, right? To be smart cities. But that all what I would say, I would connect it to what Jay Devika calls the development paradox. You have this globalization and development in a city like Bombay, and then you also have a situation where a woman, a single woman, cannot find housing, right? And she's saying is housing generally is a problem in Mumbai. Housing generally, so I will kind of go back and forth between saying Mumbai, saying sometimes Bombay because I'm used to saying both words. Right? So housing is generally a problem in Bombay, but he's saying is here specifically what is an issue is that it's not that it's that families have an issue in finding home. It's a very specific kind of person, and it's been documented, of course, that let's say Muslims, Dalits, and so on cannot find housing. There's ghettoization and all, but this is a specific category which has not been looked at. There is some amount of media reports on the fact that single people cannot find housing in Mumbai, but it's not extensive enough. And this film kind of really drives home that point, and it explores it in more detail. And one of the things that it also looked at is this power equation that is there between those who are in housing societies, those who are handling administrative positions in these housing societies, right? They are supposed to, if these positions are not where they're doing great, but it's just administrative, clerical positions, but they take this position to exercise great power and suddenly lay down their own social rules to decide who can live where and how. Now, when she's talking specifically in this documentary, it's not just looking at housing and single people, but you're looking at the intersection of single people and gender. So in a while, I'll come to specifically the question of singlehood, but here just let's look at like women and generally single women, what that presents to us. So in the documentary film, we also see that the single woman is a threat to society and heteronormativity. And here, singlehood and living alone becomes equated and conflated, right, with alcohol, with drinking alcohol, with short clothes, with partying. And one of the housing society members says, right, it is anti-Indian culture. He talks about Sanskriti, about Indian culture. It becomes immoral, right? When married people do immoral activities, that is not taken into account, right? But when an unmarried person does that, it becomes an issue, right? So a person might be single and living alone, but that is conflated to all the ills that is taken society, right? Alcohol, drinking, the short clothes, the partying, anything which is anti, which is that is one conflation that is happening. That I cannot that idea that I draw from some of the discussions that some of the points that the uh, housing housing societies are making those 2-3 people are. Right? And the definition of the family itself is broken down, right, in the film. So what is seen as family by the housing societies is husband, wife, and child, right? Whereas they don't understand that family could also mean two sisters, which is what one of the women is saying, that me and my cousin, we are two women, we want to live together, but that is not seen as family. So that definition of family is also becoming solidified through this film. We are getting to understand what Indian society is understanding by family. And because these societies, housing societies are only made for families, what is happening is that single people are pushed to live in increasingly unsafe spaces. What Annie Reddy calls the SRA scheme houses. These are filthy, they are rotting, they're unsafe, they might break, they might fall on your head, they are risky places. And what one of the activists says, there's an urbanized way of ghettoization. I find that very interesting that this is another form of, you are literally by not allowing your by not allowing single people to live in these apartment complexes with other married people and families, you are ghettoizing them. And you're not just ghettoizing them into, let's say, a nicer place, but you're ghettoizing them into something which is really unsafe. And when it comes to women, it just increasingly becomes more and more unsafe. That is one way. I want to bring here a point which I had a discussion that we had in class, and one of my students raised this point that what if we have separate housing complexes just for single people? And I said, yes, that is an interesting idea, but what would it lead to? So I said, one of the things would be that it would be another form of ghettoization and separation. The other is that any housing society or any living arrangement needs to be diverse, right? It's very important if you grow up in a diverse environment that you understand that there are diverse ways of living. So what, by pushing out single people, what you are actually doing is you are not really also exposing your children to a different lifestyle, to a different way of living. That imagination then gets lost. That imagination that a person can live alone, that imagination that a person can live without a heteronormative family, that imagination completely disappears. One is it's not there in media, but it's also not there around. So this ghettoization, this urbanized form of ghettoization also runs that risk of completely, say, isolating young people from being exposed to different ways of living. And as we have seen that increasingly single-headed households are increasing in India. There are more and more. There are, I think, 7 million single women in India. It's increasing the population, right? So this is something that we have to think about. So this urbanized way of ghettoizing is actually then creating this very, very exclusive society. Now, the next point is that, which Annie Zaidi, the poet, author Annie Zaidi makes in the film, which I found very interesting. She's saying is, I have a job, I vote. Why is it that I don't have the right to an apartment? So I found this interesting, and one of the other women also says that. And I find this interesting because then what happens is a single person is not recognized as a citizen in the context of housing societies, right? You have a job, you're voting, you might have the national citizenship, you might have your passport and all your other Aadhaar card and so on and so forth, but you can't get a house. So you don't have that right to an apartment. And it's almost like it doesn't matter. It kind of negates all the other paperwork that you have. Right? That just negates. And this is something which I feel we might want to discuss a little more, this question of citizenship. Why we might want to discuss this a little more after I finish my introduction. The other point is here, what we're seeing in this film is we are looking only at middle class, urban, English educated women. And very specifically, Ketaki Chowkhani is saying, I mean, it's very clear that she's only looking at a select population. But of course, there is this one woman who comes from a small, from a village in Uttar Pradesh, comes from Basila. So that's clear diversity there. But that's asked us to think that if this is happening to women who are working in banks, who have corporate jobs, who have that kind of social and cultural capital, if this is what they are facing, what would happen to people from different social locations? Is that possibility not there at all then for, let's say, women of different social locations to migrate to a city and be able to live on their own and make a life and go on their own? Right? And it's not that we are negating this idea, like on the one hand, what Chowkhani says, we have this idea of the empowered woman, but on the other hand, you're not even allowing her to live. This paradox is there. But at the same time, women, single women are especially seen as sexually threatening. And this is another narrative which comes across, where a lot of these women are saying, we are called whores, or of course we come to Bombay to run brothels, right? So a single woman is threatening the family, it's threatening heteronormativity, it's threatening normative marital sexuality, right? And she's going to run a brothel, she's going to do so. This is one another aspect that comes about. The other point is I want to connect this film to another web series on I think it's on Z5 or Eros now. I don't remember now. It's called Sunflower. It's an interesting web series where it's a crime thriller where a murder has to take place in an apartment complex, and pretty much everybody there is a suspect. And one of the narratives of that web series is that different people are being interviewed, and this is exactly the way the women in the documentary would say, right? They are interviewed by board of managers who are managing the housing society, and that board decides whether they can be rented an apartment or not, right? And in that web series, you see that who is allowed and who is not allowed. The divorced person is not allowed, the Muslim is not allowed, the villager is not allowed. So all kinds of abject subjects are deemed unfit to live in a housing society. So here in Shikama Khan's documentary film, we see that especially focused on single women. But in the web series Sunflower, the thing is it's not just single women, but there's a long list of subjects who are abject when it comes to living in a housing society. And this is another thing which I think we need to discuss is what does the South housing society stand for, right? What is it guarding? And I feel that in the film, the housing society emerges as this specific kind of oppressive figure, right? It becomes like the nation, it becomes like the family. It kind of controls, it surveys, it exercises surveillance, and it decides whom can be included in the nation, who can be included in the family, who can be included in the housing society, and who cannot. And at some point, it's very interesting. One of the women also compares the housing society to a prison camp. So it's very interesting on the imagery of the housing society and what it stands for, how it stands for. And of course, here when I say housing society, it primarily includes the management who's deciding the rules, right? And these rules, of course, which we saw the district magistrate and the lawyers and everyone is saying the rules that they're putting in are of course unlawful. It's of course illegal to deny somebody a house, right, on the basis of the marital status or religion or caste or whatever else, right? It is illegal, right? And to be able to rent an apartment is a fundamental right? To be able to do that, right? And yet we also see that taking the legal course, right? You might go to the district magistrate. Taking the legal course is again something which has its limitations, right? They might send, excuse me?
Okay. No, go ahead.
They might, you might send a notice to the housing society, but they are not bothered. So there are limits also to legal solutions, right? It's something that cannot always be fought legally, but it is something that we need to think about socioculturally. Right, so we need to. So the first point is the single subject, the citizen, and the second point is to think about housing, different kinds of housing societies, and what do they stand for, and how can we equate them to the nation, to the family, to prison camp, and so on and so forth. And this is something which is this kind of renting practices, especially in big cities, is an issue because a lot of aspirations, a lot of rural aspirations are to move to big cities, right, and have a job. And if people cannot rent houses there, what happens to those aspirations? And not everybody can afford to buy a house. At some point, most people do rent houses. So renting practices and the discrimination that different people face while renting is something that we really need to think about seriously. That why is that the fact that you are not allowed to live in a place, or that you are pushed to live in different places, completely undoes the aspirations you might have. That completely shatters the dreams you might have of going to a city, of doing things, of earning a living, of social mobility, and so on and so forth. So it is crucial. Housing becomes then crucial to aspirations. Housing becomes crucial to upward social mobility. And what also this specific documentary being based in Bombay, what it does is it also disrupts the idea that Bombay is a safe city for women. Of course, the book, Shilpa Phatke's book, Why Loiter, definitely disrupts that idea that, Bombay is a safe city. But even something like discriminatory housing, rental practices also shows us, is Bombay really a safe city for women? Because if they are pushed towards houses which are more and more unsafe, does then the city become safe for women? And if they are not safe within their own homes, within, right? And we saw this number of cases of harassment, right? Abject kind of, prison camps, no food, no water, no this, no that, right? So if this is the case, is Bombay really a safe city for women? Now I want to bring in the question of single studies and singlehood. That's the singlehood perspective here. Now, what we see here, the one lens with which we can look at this problem of discrimination in renting practices is through the lens of sexism, which is very much there. Right? The other lens is the lens of singlism. Now, what is singlism? Singlism, for the uninitiated, is the discrimination and prejudices against single people. So this was coined by a social psychologist, Dr. Bella De Paulo, in the US, and it's now entered the dictionary. And she coined the word in the effort of consciousness raising, to say that singlehood is also a form of identity which can be discriminated against. Right? So in my course on single studies, so the course that I teach on single studies, and my students are here right now listening to it, the ones who are doing the course. In that course, I have already shown this film, and one of the reasons why I also wanted to show this film here and to discuss it was to be able to discuss singlehood as well, along with the category of housing and urbanizations and citizenship and gender as well. So what we see here is that it is not just a problem of sexism, but it's also a problem of singlism. We see that intersection. At the same time, as some of the other women suggest in the film, that it is also a question of other identities. Let's say if you are a transgender woman, let's say if you're Muslim, or if you are lesbian, or if you are working in the glamour industry, these are kind of identities which put you more at risk of not getting housing or being discriminated against. Right? Now, scholarship in single studies, there are two books specifically which talk about singlehood, living alone, and urbanization. One is by Eliakim Kislev. Let me give the book to you. This is the book. It's called Happy Singlehood. We are reading this right now in class. It's called The Rising Acceptance and Celebration of Solo Living by Eliakim Kislev. And the other book is by Eric Klinenberg called Going Solo, which is also looking at the rising instances of living alone. Now, both books are looking at the rising instances of single-headed households, of living alone in various cities. So Eric Klinenberg is specifically looking at in the US. Eliakim Kislev in Happy Singlehood is also looking at it globally, right? He's looked at mostly US and Europe, but also withdrawing from data from the rest of the world. And there is one point which both of them make, is that urbanization is helping single people live alone. And that urbanization is one of the reasons why there is a rise in solo living. right? And the saying is, why is that so? Because in smaller towns, in villages, there is family control, there is surveillance, and people don't feel free enough. In the city, you are anonymous. It is easier to live alone. Now, I find this very interesting because through this film, we see clearly that urbanization is not helping single people live alone. There are more singles. There are many single people who are living alone in Bombay or other cities, but it is not aiding. Urbanization is not helping single people to live alone. It is not that kind of where Yakin Kipler says that smaller towns and villages have more surveillance and bigger cities don't. That does not hold true in the Indian context. And we can see that from the film that family control continues, be it from the rural or small town or semi-urban to the urban space, to an urban and a global city like Bombay. Right. So this is one of the major challenges that this film and a lot of the media reports that she's citing, and if you look up that is there, it challenges this idea that urbanization is something that is helping single people live alone. Now, this is something that I have also encountered in my own research. So I looked at I looked at experiences of single people, both men and women. So here specifically, of course, Shikha is looking only at women, but it is very interesting to also look at the experiences of single men because then that gives us an understanding that how gender then plays a role here. It is not just a question of sexism. It is a question of sexism, but what else is there apart from sexism and singlism? How does that play out? So when I looked at renting practices and amongst single people in Bombay, I found the same kind of things that Shikha said, came up with, right? And what was interesting was that because I interviewed men, one of the things that I found is that the men also had similar issues, right? It might not be as bad, but it was similar. So the men also had to lie and say, like the women here were lying, the men also had to lie and say, no, I have a family, oh, I will get married. And the same question of what is a family? So there was one particular person who said that he was asked that where is your family? He said, my family is in Kolkata. He said, no, no, where is your family? He said, it's in Kolkata. I said, my parents are in Kolkata. Right? So for them, the family means only husband and wife and child. Right? The family doesn't mean children and family doesn't mean an adult and his or her parents. Right? So a man beyond a certain age, if he's unmarried, he doesn't have a family, even though his parents might be alive, his siblings might be alive. Right? So that understanding of the family, that definition, narrow definition of the family is also something that emerges in my research. And with one was, of course, women were seen as this promiscuous figure, but men were seen as people who would make noise, as people who would bring other women, and men had to perform respectability. Women, we know, have to always perform respectability. But in my research, I found that even men had to perform respect. Even men had to convince landlords and housing societies saying that I have this job, I come from this family, I am upper caste, I plan to get married. Many of them were lying, saying that, no, I plan to get married in the next one year. I am looking for a bride. They had no intention of doing that, but they had to lie. The same story, right? So it's not very different. So I found that the experiences with men also are not very different. Now, not just Bombay, I said, let me look at renting practices in another urban center. So I looked at renting practices in Pondicherry, and I was surprised that there was not a single narrative of discrimination in Pondicherry. So I asked myself, why is that so? And then I realized that it, it, it's not just about the landlords and the renting, it's also about the demographic. It's also about because that is a particularly cosmopolitan place. There are a number of white people, there are a number of tourists, people come and go, there are different communities there is co-housing. So I realized it is the nature also of the urban state which determines whether people are allowed to live alone and or not. So that is also important. So that completely undoes, and even in where I live right now in Manipal, it is not at all difficult to find housing as a single person. That is again so because it is a student town, because it is a university town. It is assumed that you will come for a few years and leave, and then you will not be there with your family, right? So it is important to understand that what kind of urban centers, that why is it that a so-called global city is not allowing people to live on their own, but smaller places. And this is running counter to a lot of the research that has happened. That is why are spaces which are not global cities, why are they allowing why are they allowing single people to live? Why is it that that is a much easier place to rent for single people? And the other point that also comes across is single people are infantilized, right? They need parental control of the housing society, which is we have seen in our research saying that single people are seen as not yet adults. So until you get married, you don't cross into adulthood, right? So this is the other point. Now, in relation to singlehood and housing, I would like to call upon two of my students who have done original research on singlehood and housing. So I would like to ask first Michelle to switch on her audio and probably her video if possible and present to us in a couple of minutes some of her findings from her research.
Hello, Ketaki. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead, Michelle.
Okay, I'm unable to turn on my video because of poor connectivity issues due to the rainfall. So
Sure.
I will begin. So in my assignment, I explored the intersection of singlehood with housing, gender, and patriarchy by looking at the narratives of various single women living alone in India. So the women were between the ages of 26 to 29, and they were voluntarily single and they did not desire to be coupled up. So I examined how women who fail to conform to the societal norm of coupling and marriage are subject to discrimination that ranges from ostracization, mistreatment, gossip to stigma within the apartment complex. So a lot of landlords in cities were hardly inclusive of singles living within their properties. The respondents described how it was very challenging for them to evade questions about their marital life, and they had to explain their reasons for staying single to the landlords and brokers while they went house hunting. They are also constantly under the social radar and surveillance of their neighbors, and they argued that leading a single life and living alone is marked by stigma and suspect, and this is especially true for the case of women. I also analyzed singlehood through the idea of planned performance. So the negative societal perceptions of singles pressure them to behave in a particular way in which they are not considered promiscuous. So the way that they present their self ranges from their dressing, their speech, their bodily gestures, to even daily interactions with neighbors. So they had to employ numerous tactics to navigate their daily lives and maintain certain conduct that is deemed appropriate to their neighbors. So the respondents, they described how they preferred to keep their front doors ajar when they were visited by male friends or colleagues to evade any kind of rumors about their character. Furthermore, they had to also adhere to these notions of chastity and respectability, not just within the public, but also the private space. So they are expected to dress decently even within the confines of their own homes. So they also mentioned how teenage boys and other young girls were asked or warned not to communicate with them, as they were regarded to be a very bad influence to these youngsters living in the flat because of their dress sense or even their singlehood status. And if their parents were to visit them often, then the neighbors were reported to be less hostile, as then they're reassured that the respondent is family driven. So we can see how this is an indicator that society is able to tolerate women if they are following these moral codes. So even when their parents visit, the parents are also constantly badgered with questions regarding marriage and grandchildren. So additionally, they all explained how they were not notified about the monthly meetings that take place regarding housing or maintenance, despite paying the same annual fees as everybody else. On the contrary, they are the first ones to be notified when there are any, when there is when they are asked to help out during festivities like Diwali, to arrange diyas or distribute sweets or make rangolis, because of the assumption that they are not busy because they live alone and because they are single and have no family. So through these respondents' experiences, I noticed how single women who were living in apartments were both invisible as well as hyper visible in matters regarding management and housing. Thus, the single woman was answerable to everybody, where her life choices are always monitored and they're always scrutinized.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for those insightful comments. This is really great work. Now, I would like to call upon Hamdi, who's also done some research on singlehood and housing in a very different context. Hamdi, can you unmute yourself? It's okay to answer the
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Uh, my study was titled Bachelors with the Rural Housing and Singlehood in India. And my research attempted to examine the problem that male bachelors face while
we can't hear you, Hamdi.
and in the outskirts of the city of Calicut. Can you hear me? As one of the fastest developing cities in Kerala,
You are breaking, your voice is breaking, Hamdi.
Other work professionals Kerala in the recent past years. So thinking from the single studies perspective, my study attempted to capture the empirical experiences that single people face while searching for houses. And in the process, I attempted to deduce the general perception that society at large maintains towards bachelors and singlehood. So even if my study in a way follows the lead of Shikamakan to who explores the experience and stigma and stereotypes faced by single and independent women in Mumbai. My study diverges primarily on 2 points. First of all of the interviews were male, so that in the sense that my study was attempting to uh, uh, deduce the neighborhoods or the community's gendered perceptions towards bachelors uh, who are interviewed. And secondly, my fieldwork was set in the rural space as opposed to the urban ambience of Mumbai city, and this had significant these outcomes for the study in the sense that it posed many challenges, and one of them was uh, that primarily that most of the stereotyping and discrimination in the rural space easily go unnoticed due to the fact that they are mostly verbal, and unlike the Mumbai where we can at least locate and notice a similar pattern of like a formalized and institutionalized and systemic way of discrimination in the rural space. But it make because due to the verbal discrimination, it becomes impossible to document and analyze them. So my study has been conducted with interviews who are between the ages 20 to 22 and who are all students. And my primarily findings are occurred at 2 points. One of them is primarily how it was very hard for them to find a proper house or a proper place to live. Most of the time, they were given rooms and other very small and unlivable spaces, that too on top of house, like shopping complex or something, and they were always denied a proper house with loan and everything. And in one of the as one of the interview recalls his experience, it was not that there were no houses or that the house owners were not willing to give them, but then as one of the house owner himself told, that it is that there was a constant pressure on even the landlords that they do not rent their houses to bachelors, and this pressure was often perpetuated by the neighborhood and people living there. And second point was regarding surveillance and intrusion, due to the fact that there were male bachelors, even the neighborhoods and even the neighbors and even the landlords would often violate the private sphere and interfere in all the intrude into all their affairs especially regarding to the maintenance of the house and how they should properly keep the like how they should. For example, one of the interview recalls they even told them how to clean the bathroom every week, how to use the washing machine, how to do all these minute aspects were always brought brought told to them. And another important aspect that which most of the another important issue which most of the interviews said that in Kerala, especially in the rural areas, the water system is like each house has a well and then the water is pumped into the tank. So as usually anyone can know that the tank is filled only when the water spills out of the tank. So if there is even a slightest delay, the house owner would call them because one of the neighbor would have complained saying that these people are very careless and they are not even taking care of such things. So these are the minute aspects which my study had attempted to capture. So I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hamdi. I'm very glad that both of you will present your work. The other students have also done great work, but the only two of them who are present, who have written on. I mean, it was their choice what to write on. Only two of them have written on housing. The others have also done very good research on singlehood, but not specifically housing. So we won't discuss that here. So with that, I think I will end my introduction and discussion, and I hope that some of the points that I've raised will help us, will initiate more discussion amongst ourselves. So thank you for that.
Thanks very much, Ketaki, for opening out the film and its issues to us. Also, thank your students, Michelle and Hamdi, for making their presentations. It's always interesting, in online discussions when we hear more than one voice. So, and good to know the kind of research that they have been doing. The film is now open for discussion. You're welcome to respond to the film and also to Ketaki's presentation. Anyone? While people kind of gather their thoughts, maybe I'll just, oh yes, Alagappan Selva has raised his hand. Please go ahead, Alagappan. Please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Alagappan, and I watched the film, and then one of the things that struck me was how a lot of women had they had what you could call conservative careers like banking and then corporate jobs, but still they were still concerned about letting the houses to them. And now we have an issue where the woman labor participation rate is just 25%. So do you think the government could help out in helping the government could help the women secure housing? Because if women who already have jobs are dropping out because they are not able to find housing, so the already poor labor participation rate would reduce even further, right? So what could the government do regarding this?
Ketaki, you can go ahead and respond.
That's a great point, actually, because you're absolutely right that I don't know what the government will do. I think they just don't care. But that's a great point that already the labor participation rates are low, and then if you don't get housing, of course you will not then do that. So this is something that we need to, I think, research and give those figures that how this is dropping how housing is affecting also women's participation in the labor, right? And in which sectors. And this is something one of our students had mentioned when we discussed this in class, when we discussed housing, was that is, if women don't have jobs, how would we expect them to even live on their own? So there are actually then fewer women who would live on their own, because few of them have jobs, and the ones who have jobs, they're denied. So you're essentially, if you're denying housing, you're essentially also denying them work. So I think that's a great one. That cannot be separated. Employment from housing cannot be separated. Thank you, Sandra, for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, anyone else? Yes, Chaman, you've unmuted yourself. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I was just thinking like a beautiful research and presentation with very concrete findings. So how do you plan to utilize this research? Like this is I can say it's like action research done in the academic setting. So, and my question is this: how do you take this research forward? Because the real problem would be solved, as Algapan had indicated, only when policies are deeply, deeply influenced, when there is strong advocacy based on this research.
That's a very good point, Saman. Thank you for that. My students can also jump in if they like after me. The thing is, I don't see this as action oriented. I would say, yes, there are policy implications to it, which have its advantages. There are also theoretical, we are also contributing to our existing knowledge on singlehood. We're contributing to existing knowledge on understanding family, understanding housing, understanding urban spaces, right? So it's not just about changing a particular setup, but at the same time, unless you have the research, you cannot really also. So, I mean, it's not like all of us who are doing, me or my students, necessarily will also go to the government with those policies, but maybe an advocate group might take up our research and say, this has been done, now what will you do? So, yeah, so one of the things then our work would be to, apart from definitely contributing to that body of knowledge in these in this interdisciplinary field, is to kind of say, this is the policy implication, this is what is there. Now it is up to other people to take it forward. At least that's how I see it. I don't know how my students or anybody else would like to respond. Or, in general, this is, I think, a general question also for research, that are we doing always research for action research, or even if we are doing research which has implications on a larger scale, do we necessarily, is it only our responsibility as researchers to take it forward? And also the other point is, even though there are laws, right, what are the limits of laws? I always seen that is a question within feminists that we talk about. What are the limits of also legal action? Can everything be legislated? I think Yeta Menon speaks about that will gender equality come about just by having laws? Right? So will suddenly landlords start renting just by having laws? Probably not. So there are limits to legal solutions is also what I try to say, which also the film has shown.
Yeah, thank you. Because my question was, like unless this gap is bridged between very important theoretical research and at the ground level practice, I think maybe it is too much to ask, because contribution to knowledge itself in itself, like a very significant contribution. But if this gap can be bridged, I think it would be amazing. So that is where I'm making my point. Thank you.
Yes, Alagapan, yes.
Yeah, another question I had was, where in the film Annie was saying that they were forced to live in unsafe places, right? So I had a similar experience where I could when I moved to a different city, where I could just get a house because no one else would live in that house because it's so old, 40-year-old house where literally the tiles were coming out of the floor or something. And so my question was, do you think we should be worrying about ghettoization when our own safety is at risk? Because I feel like even living in a separated, living in a ghettoized space is better than an unsafe place. So what do you feel about that?
Yeah, actually, they both go together because you're ghettoized. When you're ghettoized to these bad spaces, right? When you're ghettoized, especially here, the saying what that urbanized forms of ghettoization is where you are forced out from nicer places into these spaces which are crumbling and falling down.
Yeah, Shrikant, go ahead.
Ma'am, actually, I don't have a question. My partner who is with me has a question. So I just wanted to ask you if she can ask the question.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Hi, Ketaki. I just have a question for you, and this is to do with the theoretical and conceptual part of how you define single studies and the concept of being single. So I just want to go back to how, theoreticians like Dipesh Chakravarti and others have looked at the idea of family. And how, the way colonial government foregrounded the idea of individuality vis-a-vis the traditional understanding of family, and that in many ways brought the concept of nuclear unit as a family, as a given concept. And this had to do a lot with the way property ownership was decided, and the ways, then women, how they were systematically ousted of their property rights. So this may be, you may find this a bit elaborate also, but then, I remember, when we read all these theories, we realize that how, single women, particularly widows, or even, women who would not get married, or the daughters of the family, they were considered to be an integral part of that collective joint family unit. Once upon a time, no one would judge them as such. In fact, many of these women would hold a very strong say in the everyday decisions of the family also. So how then, your concept of being single then, goes back to engaging with these theoretical and conceptual categories, because we just cannot, of course, the society discriminates against singles, no doubt about it. But then, the ways in which we have borrowed these concepts and how they are to do with the ways, the property relations are being defined. So how then you talk about that? What is your take on that? Thank you.
It's a little complex. One is, of course, the category of single also is very broad and is not homogeneous. That it includes people who are never married, it includes people who are divorced, it includes people who are widowed, it includes people who are deserted, abandoned, people who might have children, people who might not have children. It includes people who live alone, includes people, as you said, right, might be living with family, might be living with their parents, might be living with extended family, might be living with their children, right? If they're widowed or divorced, they might be living with their children or grandchildren, right? And it applies both to women and men. But yeah, I think that idea of property is always been an issue because because it's patrilineal, right? So where does it go, especially for women? But even otherwise, that the question of property becomes an issue when we're talking about somebody who is, let's say, especially who's single and especially doesn't have, let's say, children, right? For whom, where, what is that inheritance? Where is that money going to? Who is inheriting? So within that framework, there are no ways in which we can decide, because it's always within the family, right? It's always within those bloodlines. So that, I don't know if I'm actually answering your question or maybe I didn't understand it. Bharti, do you want to say something?
No, the thing is that when we look at the ways in which property ownership was decided in post-independence India, had a lot to do with the way the concept of family was redefined. You know, as you very rightly put forth, you know, that family is this, you know, homogeneous unit of a husband and wife and children. Now, this is a concept, you know, family is a nuclear unit, which was introduced by the colonial government when, you know, it simultaneously, like when it put forth ideas of individuality. So before that, you know, when we look at the ways in property ownership was decided vis-a-vis the whatever the, you know, the Mitakshra system or the Dayabhaga system, there was a provision in many ways, you know, in which even if the man or even the daughter in the Dayabhaga system, they were considered to be co-parceners, women were given away some share, you know, as in even if they were considered to be the responsibility of the earning male member of the family. But how then, you know, the today when we talk of discrimination that's happening, the societal and cultural assumptions that are made against singles, I have a feeling, and that is what I wanted you to also, you know, share about, that it had a lot to do with the ways in which, you know, the women are systematically being negated or marginalized vis-a-vis their property rights today. And this is particularly to do with the nuclear unit as a family, where, you know, one person, the male member, gets an authority to write away the will. Now, as you rightly pointed out, no amount of legal measures can ensure now that, you know, women become co-parceners, because it's just a matter of writing a will against the daughter of the family.
Absolutely. Also, because now the daughter has only claims over inherited property. She doesn't have claims over the money that her father has earned on his own, the income, only the inheritance, right? So absolutely right. The father, whatever he has earned, can be given away with the will to anybody else. And with singlehood, it's an added thing that if you don't have, let's say, a spouse and you don't have a child, where does that money go to when you die? You will not get that money then, and the line stops. That is the other threat to the family, is that then what happens to the family if that person doesn't marry or is outside that heteronormativity? That line stops. That line of succession of property stops, and women do not get that. Or if, let's say, somebody has managed to earn that money and that person is single, after that person's death, who gets that money? Can they decide? And because, as you said, that property only is within the kinship and the bloodline, the person cannot, or unless the person writes a will and says, okay, I give it to a friend when I die, because there is nobody who to inherit. That's the other thing with a single person. Who will inherit it if they don't have children?
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Coming back to the film, Ketaki, yeah, so I was quite curious, you know, because I would like to know what you think of the way the film sets up the protagonist, so to speak, the single women who are interviewed in the course of the film. So we see them, you know, share their views about and their experiences about how they have, you know, been discriminated against and all that they have gone through. While on the other hand, we also, you know, there are these interviews of the housing society people who, in some ways, in the way in which the film, you know, kind of frames them, seem stuffy and, you know, obviously people who are unresponsive to the changes that are happening around them. Sometimes we feel, you know, we are expected to respond to them as, you know, look at them, here is this woman who is so complacent in the kind of pronouncement she makes about other women, or even the man who kind of makes all these Sanskriti statements and things like that. So one of the things that I was thinking of was a film like this is also an opportunity for a dialogue. Whereas in this film, which is so set in some ways on showing us the issues that single women face, in some ways is also eschewing the opportunity. Of the film, obviously there is no space for dialogue. That's what interviewee after interviewee is telling us. So in the space of the film, I was just wondering, it would have been more interesting to set it up as a dialogue rather than have these protagonists and have all these side characters who don't who obviously are not going along with the aspirations of these new and young women. This is one thing that occurred to me while watching the film. The second aspect, I like the way in which the kind of chapterization, no home for this, no home for dreams, no home for love, no home for sex. I like the way in which that works in the entire film. But I was also I would have liked these women probably also to see what is at stake. Rather than state the issue, state the issues that they are facing. There's been a number of occasions for me to also reflect on what is at stake, what is it that they feel threatened by? Is it singlehood? Is it that there is no man to own this woman, and hence, she is a threat to all the men and women around, or the families around? Is it that there is so little common ground? In the sense, families mean children, children means schooling, and then something else. So is it that there is a particular kind of sociality which is not possible? Is it that? One would have at least wanted some kind of reflectiveness on the part of these young women. Some of them are openly scornful, but they're also so young, so that's to be excused. But I don't know what your own thoughts are about how the issues issues are framed within this film as a kind of introduction to the idea of singlehood and the issues related to singlehood. I think it's a wonderful film. But in terms of issueizing some of the things that are taken up in this film, I was wondering how you see this film. Thanks, Ketaki.
Should I respond now? Should we take someone?
You can, we can take more questions and yeah. Yes, I think there was someone who was, yes, Basav, please go ahead.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you. I'm Basav. I wanted to talk about the film too. So good segue after Nikhila ma'am has spoken about it. I think personally, I felt the film let down quite a bit. I think I told you, I watched it many years ago when it was first made also, because many friends are in it, like Annie, Deepanjana, etc. But the film does not, it enters with, sort of a prejudiced idea and does not go beyond that. Right. So that was one aspect of the film which I did not like. because one thing is we all know this issue. It's not like it's an unknown issue. So a film which is going to be made in 2016 about this has to tell me more than this, right? That this issue exists. We know this issue exists, but what are the different dynamics of it? It doesn't really go into that, is what I felt. The other thing is, I thought the film was not interested in going beyond talking heads visually as well, right? So even if we look at it as a visual anthropological study, it does not go beyond showing interviews, which is, I think, it's another fallacy, because we could have, if we had seen even where they live, etc., it could have given us a little bit more dimension of whom we are talking. Like, I mean, we know some of these English speaking writers and people, so we know which class they are talking about, but the person, say American, watching this movie would not be able to judge or interpret who these women are who are being interviewed for this film. I think that's another problem, and the fact that it's actually shown on Netflix is makes this point even more, accentuates this problem, I felt. Okay, so these are the two things about the film. I also felt that the film could have gone a little bit more deeper. There's another fiction film, which actually I feel does more justice to this issue of apartment. It's called Halla. It's by Jaideep Verma. It's actually a satire on how building societies work. And it's in Bombay, of course, set in Bombay. So it's very interesting. So there have been many films actually around this issue in Indian cinema, if you look at it. And On My Own is one documentary which also deals with single women living on their own. Right. So this, I think the film does not also acknowledge this historicity of what films have been made is another issue I have. I don't think the filmmaker knows beyond that. So these are the issues about the film. Coming to the aspect of the ideas proposed here and discussed till now, I feel that one of the problems with such a narrative of the film also is that we are assuming that Indian society is liberal. It is not, right? It is definitely not, and we all should know that from our own family lives and etc. Right? So it's not like we are. And that is essentially what extends to the whole idea of an apartment complex, is what I feel, right? So and it's also the absence of state. I mean, the problem also is apartment complex associations know that the state is not going to come and save them if there is a robbery or even like a sexual assault or a rape or a murder. They know that, if I've been part of a building association, so I can tell you that if there is a murder in your building, association will be the first one which the police will be hitting, going against, right? So they will be saying, what are the safety measures you're taking in your building? How are you ensuring that unchecked antisocial elements are not coming to your building, etc. So, and people who are incapable of it, that is us, right, of this, only find the easy route of, okay, blanket ban on any kind of what the idea of antisocial we have, right? So, which includes the idea of, like, for example, one of the issues of single women living in Bangalore, I can tell you, is that there was a rape in an apartment complex nearby, and the association membership was cancelled, and there was, the police made sure that the association was tortured for many years after that, right? Because they could not solve the case, and it came on to the association, right? And the police were openly telling them that, why would you allow a single woman to live and men coming and going all the time, right? So I mean, someone was asking, why not involve state? So I just thought that it's way more complicated than just old people disliking single women or single men, for that matter, right? It's also related to this issue of safety, and this idea of gated. It's becoming more and more prevalent now, I feel, in cities, as we go from a socialist state, welfare state, to a capitalist state, right? Because the apartment complexes have they have been told basically it's your business, right? So once you enter a gated community, especially expensive gated communities, they are a country in themselves, right? So you have to abide by the rules and conditions which are laid down there by people who are actually incapable of making any laws, right? And that's essentially because of the absence of state, or the reluctance of the state to take responsibilities of concerns of safety, right? So these are the two things I wanted to say.
Yeah. Anyone else would like to respond, come in at this point? Yes, Sridhar, please go ahead. Sridhar, go ahead. Yes, yes.
Okay, related to the documentary again. See, one thing that is specific to the bachelor women of Mumbai is that they are all working women in formal or informal sector, from college going students to working women. It appears that all the women in the documentary are middle class, dominant caste, articulated. Along the way, can it be possible to examine what would be the state of experience of the other single women? Then maybe we may get a measure of dynamic aspects that impinge the single woman. One issue, they are selective also, no? When they are making that documentary. These are visible. All the things as if Mumbai is filled with only with these women. So there are all kinds. Along with men's issue, maybe men's issue may not be diversify the case, but if you can extend it to other women, then it will diversify. Men's experience may be an opposite question, maybe. Single men, as my previous speaker is saying, the family. See, I will give one of my experience. Once we went with one of my teacher for having food. So accidentally, we are all men. Then that hotel did not give us entry into the family section. So this is a sociology professor, none other than Satish Deshpande. he jumped into argument. We are family. What do you think? All that. We are just by watchers. So finally, we have to obey the hotel rules and have our food and go out. So that's in a public space also we face the how it power operates. I don't know. Is it not? If it is not state, here power is not state. Power we have to replace with state, I think. So how power operates. Earlier speaker was telling about state, no? Maybe power and authority we have to replace with. But even, let's see, if you look into, we have enough of biographies that says, even Parsis have kicked out Ambedkar from whatever the shelter he got it from them. So those kind of things are there. So, but if you mix both men and women, it may not lead to, but with single women across the sections may bring a better picture to it. So this, I had that feeling that I was watching same thing again and again. So though women changed, experience was similar. So if it were other women, the other caste women, like your students referring unemployed women, so how it will be? So like that, it would have been added much dynamic argument to it. Thank you. It's not a question, it's a comment.
Geeta, please go ahead. Geeta? Okay, Tarakeshwar has unmuted himself. Tarakeshwar and then Geeta.
Okay, I thought of responding to some of the issues that have come up. One is, I think, the issue of safety was quite interesting. So both the parties, if if the film shows two parties, one is the bachelor women who are living in rented houses, and those who are in a position to give the house in rent. So both the parties use the discourse of safety. So what is their notion of safety itself is worth pursuing. So what is their notion of safety and what is these people's notion of safety? And here I think what Basu and what Sridhar said also comes into the picture. So certain where they can get a house for rent, they think it is shady, it is not safe. And then these so-called societies taking up the question of safety on themselves and the state abdicating it is also quite interesting. So what is the safety that structures this discourse on both sides? Those who deny house for rent to these people and those who are actually take it for rent. And interestingly, all the women who have spoken have got the house on rent. It is not that they have been denied and they're living somewhere else. But the path they took to get the house is not a bed of roses. That's the point that they are making. And interestingly, one girl has just moved in and she doesn't hesitate to criticize the owner and openly claim that she has lied to get this house. So in that sense, they're very vocal and women. And what is this that makes these women so vocal? If they have lied, they're ready to accept it on camera. Just few hours after getting the house is something that needs to be looked into. If I have got a house like that, I would have been trying to hide that fact because I don't want to lose it. But here they don't mind flaunting it, how they got the house. So that privilege that they have is something that is worth looking at, I thought. And then this issue of family versus bachelor, I think it's a age-old issue because they define each other. So family uses the bachelors to define itself, and the single studies people also use family to define themselves, what they are not. So in that sense, it is not a new issue as such, but taking a kind of a diachronic view of it, how this dialogue between these two concepts of single and family, the self and the other, has changed over a period of time, is also worth looking at. So in that sense, it cuts across gender and as well as religion too. So there was a, I think, real estate agent was a Muslim, and he was also saying about the same kind of thing. So in that sense, the kind of discourse that they are speaking about the bachelors, it cuts across religion. So in that sense, as far as that discourse is concerned, I think religion is not a big factor as such. Both the Muslims or Hindus would use the same language of safety to deny house to these bachelors. And similarly, we also know that, and you also acknowledge, and your students have also shown it, that even gender may not be a big issue when it comes to single. Yes, there might be a difference, the way the men and women are treated, but the issue is common to both. So in that sense, gender may not be an issue, religion may not be an issue. Then what is the issue? Is it just being single, or even married families do get trouble to get a house on rent? If you have children, we will not give it to you. If you have young children, we will not give it, because they are likely to spoil the walls. And if you are a baby, we will not give it to you, because it will cry, it will disturb us, because we also live there. So in that sense, getting a house on rent will have its own problems. So it might vary for the bachelors, it might vary for the family holders too, or it might vary for the gender. So in that sense, getting a house is not the question here, I think, because all these people have got a house, and I have not come across anybody leaving the job just because they didn't get a house for rent. So that is also important. But how do we get the house? On what criteria we get the house? What references we bring it in? How do we negotiate this problem is something that is quite interesting, but that is beside the point. That is not the point that this film is projecting. But that is also worth looking at, because how long they can deny it to them. It's also economic issue at one point. So it's a demand and supply. If somebody doesn't come to your house and rent, you'll be losing the rent for those 1 or 2 months. So if there is a demand for your house, then you can be choosing. If there is no demand, you can't be choosing. So that dynamic always plays a role. It is not just the question of Pondicherry, Manipal and Bombay. It is also the question of demand and supply. That economic also plays a major role. And it is not actually a policy issue as such. As you said, rightly said, legally you are protected, you cannot be discriminated, but it is not the question of policy, it is not the question of law, it is actually the question of civil society. Why we are thinking like this? Given the choice, if I have a choice to deny to some people my house on rent, then what makes me to do that? One is economic factor. If that is taken care of, there is a demand or there is no demand, then it's actually my mentality. Is this mentality, as Nikhila was trying to say, they don't know the kind of development that are happening outside, as if they are far left out, they're still struggling to cope up with the changes that are happening elsewhere. No, actually, it is actually they're responding to the changes that are happening. The globalization, the new capital, the kind of changes it is bringing in, it's actually making them to respond in such a fashion. It's a response to the changes. They don't know how to cope with it. So it is not that some pre-modern mentality which is still there, which will go away eventually as the nation or the world is changing. No, it's actually the changes that are happening, they are aware of it and they're responding to it. Whether that response is right or wrong is a different issue. But the rise of fundamentalism, we can say, I think can be visible here. So it is not simply a question of single or family. It is also the question of Samskruti now. I don't think 30, 40 years back, the word Samskruti would have been used in such a way. So what is this Samskruti which we are hanging on to? When there is a lot of changes around us, the way the new capital is playing up itself around us, whether we need to go with the flow, whether we need to resist it, that's the confusion that is happening. I think that's why I said we need to take a historical view. The problem existed earlier, the family was a single. But how this family versus single is being played out in the context of Mumbai, in the context of new jobs coming up, in the context of women majorly entering these new jobs, whether it is media, they're celebrities. It is not that they're ordinary people. Some of them were celebrities. They want to take their autographs. Somebody knows that yeah, she has been recognized that she is on TV. So in that sense, they're celebrities. But even the celebrities, you accept them, you want to see them on TV, but you also want to keep a kind of distance with them. What is it that makes you to acknowledge them as celebrities as well as keep a distance from them? And what is this keeping a distance? That is being played out and will not have in our housing society. I think these are the complex issues that we need to look at. I think I am taking too much of time. I will just stop here. Thank you.
Ketaki, you want to respond? There are two people who have raised their hand. Do you want to respond now or listen to the Geeta and Chaman and then respond?
I will listen to them.
Okay. Geeta, go ahead.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Nikhila. Actually, what I wanted to say has already been, spoken about by you and Sridhar and Basav, I guess, in far better ways than I could. I just wanted to, talk about certain formal aspects of, the form of a documentary. A documentary, of course, is basically meant to reflect reality and to expose or speak about something real in the world around us. But along with that, it is as much about storytelling as it is about representing these this reality or these facts. And for me, somewhere, that kind of, it didn't work. This film didn't work for me at that level of the way the story of these bachelor girls was told. And the interview mode, which Basav has already pointed to, was the dominant mode. And even there, the interviews were conducted in such a way that we know absolutely nothing else about these women. We don't even know where they work and, from which other place they have come and, into Bombay. So there's absolutely no rounded, representation of these women. So, and apart from this, of course, the other aspects of, housing and singlehood have already been discussed in a detailed manner. So I don't want to dwell on that. But for me, this was the main reason why it didn't really work.
Chaman had raised her hand. Yeah. Go ahead, Chaman. Chaman, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I have unmuted myself. I found the documentary hitting a point because I felt the realities of it. Maybe I personally related to it. Though I have never gone through this type of drastic situation, because being a single woman with an adult girl child, having my own apartment in Chennai, but then having a work life which would take me to different places, and then shifting to Bangalore because my daughter was doing her law course in Bangalore. I related to it because when first I went to see the rented house, the same question arose. I, as a single woman, am going and talking to the landlord in the apartment complex. And the first question happens is, I'll be little brief, but I'm saying that I didn't see flaw in the documentary, but as a woman, as a single woman, I deeply related to the issues, though I didn't face them in that intensity. The first question was like, what your husband is doing. And I said, everything I'm doing, rent I will pay, advance I will pay. I'm responsible for my daughter. I'm a working woman. And then there was a silence. And then I started explaining my work, but adopted a little bit negotiating skill. I wasn't telling lies. I explained, you know, like forthwith that I don't live with my husband and I'm a divorcee. But I work with humanitarian organizations. I work with development organizations. I mostly live in Afghanistan. My daughter would live alone here. Most of the time, I may come to visit her. And yeah, perhaps it is the Bangalore. Bangalore is a little different from Mumbai, as I have seen from this, this documentary. They were able to understand that here is a woman who would be able to pay us rent regularly and who has brought up her child single-handedly. So my singlehood differed. I was looked at as a woman who, within quotes, have dedicated her life to raise her child where she is coming and doing her law course. So this is how, perhaps, I'm not being theoretical, I'm not an academician, but where, I mean, many single women will find that the documentary is relating to their core issues, whether they have faced it in that intensity and severity or not, but they are relating to the core issues. And that brings me to the point of different type of singlehood. A widow may be respected a little more in our society. A divorced person may be scorned, but when you are very confident, or this is how I had done with her, when the principal asked me in Christ University, like, where is her father? And I had told, no, father, I'm responsible for her. Everything should come to me, all the communication, because I am raising her. And then no question asked. So it depends on the mentality of the person and the way you are single. So I was able to relate to these girls. Some of them were giving, of course, from where they are coming. And it must be the time limitation of the documentary or whatever. But the issues came out very, very clearly in this documentary. Whether it is celebrity, whether it is a girl who has come from a small town, and their problems were narrated, you know, different dimensions of the problem, which I think most of them are facing, living in the apartment complexes, unless they are living in all women PG sort of environment. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chaman. Any other responses? Anyone else would like to come in at this point? Yes, Sanjay Kumar, please go ahead.
I was looking at captions, which were quite interesting to me, like no room for freedom, no room for love, no room for dreams. Ironically, in the beginning, you find Bombay, city of dreams. But then later on, we find that there is no room for dreams, no room for her voice. So the word room has been used in different meanings, like the room, first of all, as a place, like a room in a house, the way we understand it. Second meaning, room as a space for doing something. And the third was the room as the chance to do something. So when we say no room for love, no? Okay. So, so somehow these captions reminded me of these two works of Virginia Woolf, A Room of One's Own and 3 Guineas. 3 guineas when she wrote, which is also related to a room of one's own. So she said that I would give 3 guineas, one for stopping the war, one for the education of women, and the third one for the career of women, for employment of women. So how do we, ensure the career of women if we are not able to provide her a space? I mean, be it in the family or outside the family when she is going to rent a flat or a room. Because these things are related. If she doesn't find a place of her own where she can do things according to her will, she can meet people according to her wish, where there is some scope for creativity. So this question of getting a room for single women is related to the future, like that. How do we ensure a happy life? So it seems to be that there is some kind of criminalization of, I prefer to use the term happily unmarried people. So then finally that becomes a big obstacle for the people who are unmarried. So we know all kinds of prejudices, and of course that exists also for males. But in the case of women, it's more serious, and that is what we have seen in this film. So this issue of not getting a room of one's own is related to finally the progress or the development of women, and that has been shown in the film. Though it could have been, obviously, as several people have pointed out, could have been problematized in a better way. But of course, it focuses, at least it addresses some issues. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Ketaki, I was also like thinking of two other things as well. One is, when the link didn't work, I was kind of looking at looking for other links that were working, and invariably Bachelor Girls, took you to links that seem to have something to do with porn and sex, and so it seemed like we were going to look at a documentary like this, but the way it is framed in the world of the internet is very, very different, so I was just wondering if you have anything to comment about that. The second aspect has to do with this point that you're emphasizing about singleness and singlehood itself. The film, I think, reiterates that it's not, I mean, it's gender at one level, but it's also in terms of the way in which it seems to pose a threat to family and therefore to Sanskriti. Recently, this Karnataka health minister made this outrageous comment about how women are choosing to remain unmarried and therefore, connected a whole lot of declines that are happening, decline in family, decline in culture, and so on. So I felt that this film in that sense was was speaking very much to this kind of thing that goes in the name of common sense, commonsensical reading or understanding of the changes and the choices that women are making, and the kind of reaction that is coming to these choices. So yeah.
should I respond to the
Yes, Ketaki, go ahead. You can respond. Yeah.
Thank you so much for bringing it back to the film, back to the discussion of the film. Actually, I mean, I really enjoyed all the points. Thank you very much. Most of them I did not think of, especially one is about the film that it was this kind of black and white kind of juxtaposition. That dialogue was not there, and you're right. The way it was shot, the form itself did not, I think, allow for that kind of dialogue. And just maybe it was, I can't say. I mean, we'll have to probably ask the filmmaker. But I have a feeling maybe because this was her first documentary film that she made in this kind of just the interviews, and we didn't really see where they lived. I mean, most documentary films just follow them where they go, what they're doing. So I think that was definitely missing. I think when she made it, she just wanted to drive home the point that she had this experience, other people had this experience, so let me make a film on it, which as you said, right, didn't have that much nuance, but also brought out this point sharply. So definitely, ma'am, Gita ma'am, Nikhila ma'am, and some of the others, sorry, I don't remember the name, who also pointed that out. I agree with you. Tarkishu sir, I thank you very much for your deliberations on some of these things. Have really made me think more deeply. One is that yes, both women and housing societies were using questions of safety and how do they understand safety. Yeah, that is something that we need to think about. Definitely here, as I mentioned, which is definitely here we're talking about privileged women. We are definitely talking about upper caste, middle class, educated, English educated women in well-paying jobs. So I don't know what it would be like. I think somebody pointed out, I don't know what it would be like if she had interviewed people who are from other social locations. I don't know. So I mean, that's also in a way a research that I haven't done, and there is not much work upon this also. So that is the limitation for sure. That is the limitation for sure. Yeah, that bachelor is always that self and the other, right? They define. So it's like bachelor is family, or that bachelor, as in we could say either the single or the couple, right? This is that relational category, right? That single and the family, the couple. So that definitely they're defined by each other. It is always in relation to each other. Yeah, definitely gender is not the issue. I feel here the issue is I don't know that when you say that certain families also have a problem in getting rent. Yeah, I did not think of it. Yeah, I mean, with small children, definitely they will draw on the walls is an issue. But clearly, the film also they have written somewhere that bachelors and foreigners not allowed. But that is far more that is very different from. I mean, there is no way they will write something on a board saying family with children not allowed or something like that. But yes, definitely that is there. But I'm wondering whether even for families it is a problem, but can we really equate it with this kind of stuff saying that with that sign saying bachelors not allowed, we don't rent to bachelors, or in the rent agreement they say, okay, no pets allowed. I think the question of pets we also missed, right? No pets allowed. So those where renting for families is a problem, but where is it really properly stated? So that might be the difference. I don't know, that the question of demand and supply, you said that it is not about the city, right? It is not about whether it is Bombay or Pondicherry, Manipal, or wherever that is. But I feel that supply and demand is there in all these places, right? Because let's say in Pondicherry, that there's constantly people who are willing to, and especially there are a lot of foreigners. In Manipal, constantly students. Like if you don't take it, they'll give it away. I mean, within one day houses go. So the question of demand and supply, I don't know, it doesn't really work. That economic factor, yes, but there is very much a demand in places like Manipal, Pondicherry, but still they are not choosy. So I think it is then to do with number of other things. But thank you for that point. Definitely, that economic factor does play a role. You are absolutely right. It is a question of civil society. That it definitely is not a pre-modern thing. That I completely agree, sir. That it is a response to the present. It is definitely a response to they're not able to cope with it. How do you cope with it? It's a response. So what I feel is, I mean, now that I reflect on what you are saying, is I feel that it is a response to that whole that idea of constitutional value. They wouldn't have said that. Right? Definitely that fundamentalism plays a role. They wouldn't have said this Indian values, and that's one of the reasons why the first time I probably heard a minister say, right, that man brought up. First time I heard a minister say that it is that Indian whatever it will lead to so many other things. If women are not marrying and that whole Indian values, right? So definitely it is that present moment of fundamentalism. But I feel that is it has to manifest somewhere, right? And I think one of the sites is then single people, right? So that's where is the Sanskrit playing out? That Sanskrit always played out with some abject other, right? I think single people now is beginning to be added to that. That's the sense I get. And yes, historically, definitely family versus single, but yeah, we need to study more historically what is this understanding of the single, at which point was the single, etc. But I think that's a different discussion. We're going off from the film. Actually, ma'am, in the context of when you said, so that is my response to Sir's point. But I would like to say thank you very much for this point that have made me think more, and definitely this will enrich my own research and thinking. The question of when you Google that word bachelor girls, definitely in the world of the internet, it leads you to these things. Even I encountered that. Since I was looking at it in office, it seemed a little odd. I was like trying to avoid it, and I think that's also of course related because in the world of the internet, bachelors and girls would be definitely that. Definitely would be. I can't think of anything else. It would definitely lead you there. Or for me, I remember Pondicherry University and even other most universities. You can't type the word sex or sexuality. Very often, certain sites are banned. So it's, I don't know how else to respond to this, but yeah. I mean, in the world of pornography, of course, it's not just the bachelor or the bachelor girl or just the bachelor who is then this desirable figure. Of course, there are other kind of figures also in pornography, but definitely maybe I think it also leads to that because of the chat rooms and all. I think, ma'am, with the chat rooms that can you live sex and chat rooms where they're saying chat with a bachelor, chat with a bachelor. I think it's also related to that because in the porn world, it's not just the unmarried person who is a desirable figure, right? It's often, let's say, the mother, the father, those incestual relations are also there, right? So it's not just the bachelor who's desirable, but I think here it's leading us to also that because of that of the chat rooms where men might log in. I've not done much research on this, I can't say, but I'm just speculating that that live that they can have a live chat with somebody, right? And that person then would be a bachelor girl or would be a bachelor or would be a girl, rather than the films itself which are made, which is then where it can be with any family, but it doesn't have to be an unmarried person.
I was thinking more in terms of sexual availability.
But I think in the world of porn, practically everybody is available, right? In the world of porn, because you have these figures like the mother, you have the figures like the father, you have this intergenerational this thing. So it's not that only it's like literally everybody and anybody can be available. Like that fantasy goes everywhere. But yeah, definitely that sexual availability, yes, definitely. That's with that immediate contact, right? You can immediately chat with this bachelor person who's available. Yeah, that is very much. I think must be that chatting thing.
Yeah. Anyone else? Any other responses? Anyone who hasn't spoken so far? Rajan? Rajan, would you like to respond?
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
I found the film very, very interesting. And in fact, I'd written a paper on a bachelor some years ago, right? But it's not published and I haven't done more work on it. But what I found interesting is this idea of ghettoizing people on the basis of religion is something that the documentary didn't touch upon, because we are facing that in Gujarat in a big way, right? And they've actually passed an act in parliament which is called a Disturbed Areas Act or something of the sort, which if a person wants to buy a property, you have to say that, well, he or she, if he's a Christian or a Muslim, or he or she is a Christian or Muslim, right, then they have to go before a police court and there's to be a police inquiry and say that this is safe, right? So that's as bad as ghettoization is, even for buying property, not for just staying, right? And one of the things that happened when I was living in rural Gujarat, that is Patan, right, is what is very important was I had a female colleague who had lost her eyes on the day she got the Cambridge Nehru Fellowship, and it was very tragic, right? So she could hardly see very much, and she was a maths person. So she kept changing a number of houses, and all the time they would throw her out because she was single, right? And then of course she bought a house, and that was the end of a problem for a long time, right? So that's one of the solutions out. But I was thinking over here when we had this film is the actual problem about choice, right? These are people who have made a choice not to get married, right? So the other people don't choose anything at all, or they get into marriage without a choice, right? So are they really fighting with these people because who are you to choose, right? Our Indian culture says no, women cannot choose, men also cannot choose. Marriage is something essential, right? So I don't know whether that's the real issue, and that's why there's a lot of nagging, or whether they feel that single people are free, right, and they don't have to undergo all the problems that married people have to, right? So maybe they feel a lot of people feel very upset about that, right? And that's not even the case, right? Because I think single people also have issues to deal with, which are not these issues per se, but they're living an independent life itself has another set of a different set of issues involved, right? So which I'm not saying are greater or less, but it's not the freebooter that you have as imagined, right? So that's one. But of course, the idea of a woman being single, a woman having freedom, I think that's something that really troubles a lot of men, right? Yeah, and the idea of a woman staying alone and being powerful enough to stay alone, that's something that's very troubling, I think, for any patriarch, right? Yeah, so I think that's really the film actually brings this out very well, right? And well, you have all the women laughing when they talk about this, so they're actually talking about a lot of troubling things, right? Yeah, and I think that's also very interesting, right? That many of them laugh, not all, right? I wouldn't say all of them, but they find that it's very amusing, right? It's as if they're saying, well, you're troubled about me, right? You're troubled about the fact that I'm living my life on my own terms, and I don't care about your norms of society at all, right? So that I found that part of the film very good. Okay, of course, it was not about the poor people. Do migrant women go and stay in these big cities? We've not even touched upon that, and I don't know anything about it, right? And that actually the film makes you think about, right? That these are people who are not represented. And what about women who want to leave their villages and stay single and work single and all those kind of things, and what happens to them, right? Without economic background, right? I think That's important because all these people can afford places to live in, right? And that makes a difference from the people who just come to Bombay to earn a living and don't have a house, and they have to compromise themselves in so many different ways, right? Yeah. Anyway, I think I've spoken too much. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. Any other responses? Yes, Tarakeshwar. Yes, go ahead.
If there's no one else, just two quick responses. One is drawing on from what Rajan just said about since if it is the question of the culture on which the discourse of this denial of house and rent is based on, language plays a major role. So where you can't have a direct dialogue with the landlord, so you have to go through the agent, and the agent will mediate between the two. So the language plays a major role in that, number one. And number two, language can also be used to negotiate. If I know the language, if I'm a Marathi speaker, not a Hindi speaker or English speaker, but I know Marathi, and if the landlord is also Marathi, I know what familial terms to invoke to address the landlord. So I think the language plays a major role in this interaction in negotiating this obstacle of getting a house. That's the point that I wanted to make. One, this local versus the non-local in Bombay, Marathi versus non-Marathi. I think that gets played out, but through language, not directly. In this case, I think that's the point. One. The second point is about whether the problems that the family faces vis-a-vis the landlord and the problems that the bachelors face vis-a-vis the landlord, can they be equated? No, they can't be equated. I'm not saying it. Qualitatively, there is a difference too. But what I was trying to point out was, for example, the overflow of water tank. It need not be the issue of a bachelor or a single. It could be the problem of the family holders too. So in that sense, we need to be careful in separating out what are the problems that the single face and the single woman face, and you as a tenant face generally. So that distinctions, the comparative perspective we need to have to understand specifically what is specific to the singles or what they share with other category tenants. So in that sense, I was using it. And another point related to that is when we say social, economical, political, sexual, marital, these are all analytical categories. So the phenomena that we are investigating is a wholesome, a complex one. So we use these categories to analyze the phenomena. And in research, of course, we focus on one category, one as the object of inquiry, either economic factor or the sexual factor or the marital status factor. But just because for our analysis, we are segregating one factor from the other with which it is enmeshed as a phenomena, doesn't mean that they are two different things. They're enmeshed. So it is necessary in a research to segregate them and focus on one object of inquiry, but not to the extent of overlooking the relations that it has with other analytical factors. I think that was the point that I was trying to make. If I sounded like that they can be equated, or there is nothing specific to marital status vis-a-vis the uh, tenant versus landlord, I was not saying it. Just a quick clarification about that.
Yeah, any other points? Yes, Basar, please go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just wanted, that was a very small point. I think we are already out of time. I just wanted to say that with respect to law, also there is scope in terms of looking at how, for example, the Indian law allows that bylaws can state that bachelors will not be given house or apartment, whatever it is, right? So there are many building complexes which have this as part of their bylaws. So you just cannot rent there. It's not because their building bylaws state that we will not rent it out to. I mean, as a owner, you cannot rent. Even as a owner, if I want to rent it out, I cannot because the building bylaws state that I cannot. So this possibility itself is there, right? So that aspect also needs to be looked at if we are, kind of, even if we are making a film about this, is what I feel, right? So because it's there is something within the state's uh, operations which allows this to exist. With respect to pets also, for example, there is, your bylaws can state, in Bangalore at least, that we can say that no pets allowed in the building. So it's up to the association, so, and no bachelors also, right? So these are, when the law allows it, what is the question, what are we talking about, right? So that's that's also a fundamental issue to look at. Of course, if we look at, like how we are studying it as a culture, and the problem of culture around it is there. But I think if you also look at the law aspect, it is much deeper problem, right? I mean, why have there been no petitions, or if they have been, what have happened to them? I would be curious to know, if I want to research this, to change this or amend this law to allow bylaws to do anything they want, right? Yeah, I mean, just this last point. Thank you.
Yeah, I would just like to respond to that if there's a little moment, because when we're talking about this, I think one of the problems that came up was the idea of children being not allowed, right? And you have places in Germany where you have uh, what they call kinderlos heirat, that is marriage without children, and those are places where you have only societies of people who don't have children, right? So maybe at one point of time we would have all those kind of things even here, if people choose to, right? So I think the choice business is important, and somewhere down the line there is an unspoken fear that some people are exercising the choice and everybody else is not. That seems to be the actual condition why the film is made, because people are taking up the issue with people have chosen to be different, right? Was somewhat different at least, right? In choosing a marriage status, at least they've chosen that, and many of the people don't, right? So I think that's what actually seems to be a problem, right?
Okay, any other response? Okay, if no one has anything else to say, let me thank Ketaki for suggesting this film, and also for the very thought-provoking framing that you offered to the film, and also to your students who came, to share their research with us today. Thank you all for participating in the discussion. I'm sure there were many dimensions to this issue that we could talk about today. So thank you all. Next week we begin the special session in Talking Films online. This is back-to-back screening of Kannada films. So 3 weeks we will have 3 discussions on different Kannada films, and the directors will also be joining us for these discussions. This is also a very sad moment in the Kannada film world, and also in Karnataka with the death of a superstar, Puneet Rajkumar, recently. We planned this event some weeks ago, but in some ways we are training our eyes on Kannada cinema at a particularly difficult time for the Kannada film industry. I urge you all to join us for these discussions from next week onwards. Like today, we will have a wonderful set of speakers who will initiate the discussion. And also the directors will be joining us. Shika Makan could have probably, had to, had things to justify her film. I don't think it's fair to expect Ketaki to stand for her film. So if she had come, probably it would have been a different kind of discussion as well, but that was not to be. Thank you all for joining today, and hope to see you all in the coming weeks. Have a very good night and goodbye.
Thank you, Ketaki, for suggesting the film and also leading the discussion. And thank you, everyone. See you next week. Good night.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Okay, bye. Bye, Ketaki. Bye. Bye.